In the 1940s, Russia developed a chemical weapons program at a top-secret base known as Floyd, the Fentanyl Laboratory Observation Yakutsk Delta. Researchers kept a group of 5 prisoners alive for 15 days, using an experimental gas-based fentanyl. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor to gas levels, as it was deadly in highly concentrated amounts. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so microphones were placed inside 5-inch thick glass porthole windows to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with Hustler magazines, cots to sleep on without any bedding, a toilet, and enough purple drank and KFC to last the party for over a month. The test subjects were prisoners of the communist, bunch of trannies. Everything went well for the first 5 days, and the subjects didn't complain. Conversations were recorded, and as the test went on, the trannies began speaking more and more about increasingly strange and disturbing desires for banana and mayonnaise sandwiches, pregnant women to beat, and crack whores to star in porno shoots with. On the 6th day, the trannies began to break down and complain about their conditions and the circumstances that lead them there, and the group started exhibiting signs of extreme paranoia. They ceased talking with each other, and instead began to whisper into the microphones implanted within the one-way mirror glass windows. They would each talk to the researchers as if they were snitching on their comrades for minor crimes, with one being repeated often by every member of the group, that every man aside from himself was trying to forge $20 bills. This continued the next few days, the trannies becoming more and more disheveled and distraught, until on the 9th morning, one of the trannies broke out into a terrible, blood-curdling scream. He stood up from his cot and began running around the room, pounding his chest and screaming at the top of his lungs. The longer he screeched, the more animalistic he became, until the researchers could hardly distinguish the sound from that of a silverback gorilla in heat. Suddenly the hollering stopped, but the tranny continued to sprint across the room and pound his chest, making slight squeaks as blood dribbled from his mouth, researchers believing he had torn his vocal cords. The other 4 trannies, however, had no reaction, and instead kept speaking into the microphones as if nothing had changed, until one of them stood up and began doing the same a few minutes later, until he too tore his vocal cords. Upon his ape-like calls halting, the other trannies promptly turned away from the microphones, shit into their hands, and began to chuck it around the room at each other while ooking like chimps. Eventually, they picked up their feces and smeared it across the windows, blinding the researchers, and then all the whispering from inside the chamber ceased. 3 more days passed, with researchers hearing no voices from the microphones inside, only hearing the faint sounds of KFC buckets rustling and purple drank bottles hitting the floor. Readings from inside the chamber indicated that all 5 trannies were still alive inside, but that there was an abundance of carbon dioxide in the chamber and an excessive heat, seemingly meaning that they had all been exercising heavily despite making no sound. As the 14th day came, readings inside the chamber began to drop, and fearing the worst, researchers broke their own test protocol and used the intercom to speak to the trannies inside, hoping to get a reaction from them.
We are immediately ending the experiment, and will be at the chamber shortly to free you all. Please be ready with your hands in the air, standing still.
To their surprise, a single voice spoke back to them from a microphone sounding deeper in pitch and harsher than any of the trannies had prior.
Buddha, we no longer want to be free now.
The research team was immediately confronted by their NKVD superior, and they came to the conclusion the best way forward was to finish the test as planned, as no one was able to rouse any further responses from the tranny test subjects. When the morning arrived, the researchers shut off the intake flow of fentanyl gas into the test chamber and started a flow of fresh air, when immediately 3 rough voices began begging into the microphones for the gas to be turned back on. NKVD officers brandishing pistols opened the door to the test chamber, when a terrible stench hit them, and they began screaming in unison with the 4 remaining trannies still alive they saw standing before them. Well, alive is the wrong term. No one there could have deemed the state they were in as still alive. The KFC and purple drank rations past the first 5 days remained untouched, still sitting on the test chamber countertop ready to be removed from their ration packs and prepared. Chunks of the dead tranny subject's cheeks and its cock and balls were stuffed into the center drain of the chamber, allowing 4 inches of filthy blood, shit and piss-infused water to accrue on the sunken floor of the room. All 4 surviving trannies had large chunks of flesh removed from their bodies as well, looking like they had taken their self-cutting to the next level, going so far as to expose the bone in their fingertips, and their faces and remaining flesh were smeared black with feces, so black that they all looked indistinguishable from niggers despite being Russians. The rest of their bodies were torn apart, with organs and guts strewn about floor, waiting in the water, still attached to them and functioning. The trannies began to scream in unison, sounding like a pack of rabid orangutans.
Booga booga, give US the fentanyl. Booga booga, give US the fentanyl.
Staring down and beginning to walk towards the agents with the animalistic intensity seen only when a nigger is about to steal a car. The NKVD men readied their pistols and fired. However, the untold amounts of fentanyl ingested by these trannies had evidently made them impervious to pain, and they continued to move towards the agents. As the agent nearest the door dropped a magazine from his pistol and began to reload, one of the trannies had waded to him and grabbed him by his throat.
Booga booga man, that fentanyl is gonna be mine.
The tranny turned nigger monstrosity said, staring into the guard's eyes, before digging his skeletal fingers into the guard's tightly gripped esophagus, killing him. Realizing something was dreadfully wrong, the reaming squad of NKVD agents backed away to the other end of the room and continued firing upon the tranny nigger creatures, but they continued to make their way towards the agents and research team, screaming,
Booga booga please. That fentanyl man.
While they continued approaching, one of the tranny niggers began to grasp his throat, falling to his stomach. Its screaming became quiet cries for help and air.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
It said repeatedly, before finally dying. The remaining tranny nigger creatures too began to slow down, they as well starting to seemingly clamor for air, despite for the first time in 15 days having clean air to breath. The NKVD men began to execute the remaining tranny niggers as they lay on the ground, kneeing on their necks to keep them still and putting bullets through two of their heads, when one of the research team requested that the final one be kept alive to be studied. Quickly scooping up whatever insides and flesh that were still attached to the being, and rushed it to the facility emergency room, to be placed on life support and spoken to. As the tranny nigger was placed on its hospital bed, it began to regain consciousness, and whispered to the researcher holding it,
Please, man, I gotta get me that fentanyl or I ain't gonna make it. Booga booga please, I can't breathe.
The researchers looked at each other worryingly, as the experimental fentanyl is what turned these trannies into the monsters they are now. But they didn't see much other choice. They retrieved a pressurized tank of the fentanyl gas from the experiment facility down the hall, and placed a mask with a steady flow onto the tranny shit-covered nigger face. As soon as the gas was switched on, the creature opened its eyes, and looked toward the researchers, with the eyes like that of a bonobo. The researchers asked the tranny why it mutilated itself in such a way, and why it would smear feces across its body.
I gotta feel that fentanyl high.
The tranny nigger said,
After the first few days, get used to it, man. Gotta open up a little to get more fentanyl inside my body, man.
Following its response, the researchers pondered to the tranny, what caused it change the way it did? Why did it become so beastly and animalistic, turning into a monstrosity?
Booga booga, it's the fentanyl, man. It feels so damn good. You just stop caring. When I'm free, man, I'm gonna swallow a whole bag of fentanyl. It opened the gateway to the other side, to the niggerverse.
The researchers, disturbed but perplexed, wrote down the answers being given to them.
The fentanyl is the universe, man. It has released the inner animal nigger inside. Booga booga, the only thing that matters, man, is getting high. Once you accept the fentanyl, you too will accept your inner nigger, man. That's right. Drop and dip that shit into your hand. Smear it across yourself and become the niggers you were always meant to be.
It shouted, every word it spoke driving the tranny nigger more and more enraged. The research team continued to write down notes, but as they were distracted, the tranny nigger grabbed the two researchers to its left and right, clasping tightly with their skeletal nigger fingers, before slamming their heads together, caving in their skulls like a gorilla would cave in two watermelons. The remaining researcher jumped back, and the NKVD officers drew their pistols and fired. The creature looked towards them and spoke, just before being shot in its ugly tranny nigger face, which all of a sudden became calm, warm and elated.
Booga booga, man, finally, I can breathe.